And welcome everybody to this week's coaches meeting, or this biweekly coaches meeting. I starting to see again, as we keep getting further and further past our return to play in August, we're starting to see more and more people come back with more sports seasons coming back. So it's nice to see the familiar faces, but it's also nice to see the new faces that come in. I know last coaches meeting I was off, and Don took my place for that, so I appreciate. So thank you, Don, for doing that, and we'll get caught back up to going forward with what's going on now, and then be able to take some questions as we go on and at the end for this. So as I've typically started at these meetings, I'll just go ahead and pull up our handy dandy map from the Wisconsin Department of Health. And kind of give a little bit of commentary of what's going on with this. So the last, we did a great job, especially going in February. The numbers were coming down. March numbers were coming down. And recently, I think now that the weather is getting better and just a variety of other factors, we're starting to see an uptick the last couple of weeks across the state. So last week, or so this week, we're up 25% across the state, and last week we were, I'll pull this up too, we were up 34% across the state. So just a reminder, I know a lot of the programs right now are starting up track season, which would be outdoors, and so I know that's helpful for as far as our phasing process goes, but just because things are getting a little bit better, and things are starting to open up a little bit, just still make sure we're diligent in our in our policies and protocols to keep people safe with this. As people get out and about more, the numbers they may be upticking. There are a variety of other factors for that, but that's just kind of where we are on the map right now. Again, we're monitoring based on our phases. So if you take a look through most of the high, which is that darker blue, typically right now is over 100. So it does not affect the outdoor event practices and events as much, but just the indoor practices so we're talking about basketball skills or swimming. In order to get to phase 2, we do need that number under 100 on our current phasings side of things, and so. We're monitoring the counties that the host county for basketball skills, as well as the counties that would be traveling to basketball skills. We're having conversations about that, but just note that we're monitoring that number. 100 is kind of that breaking point, and these numbers do come out Wednesday afternoon. So hopefully for basketball skills, we'll continue to have conversations about those and come up with some sort of decision. Sooner than later, knowing that basketball skills state competition would be next a week from Sunday. So trying to make sure that we're staying within our protocols, we're staying what's safe for us for offering events. And then we're continuing to look through not only the Wisconsin Department of Health, but the CDC guidelines and all of that for any adjustments that we may make or not make on some of those type of stuff. So that's just kind of the update for the map is going. Unfortunately, I wish it was better news that we were kind of staying the same or getting a little bit better. Obviously, we're in a lot better spot than we were even a month or two ago as far as those numbers go, but still for those indoor events, looking for the numbers to get a little bit better for us to have be able to go to phase 2 and host some of those events. So on that type of things. As I mentioned, basketball skills, we did make an adjustment, and the agencies that have been affected by it have been notified based on numbers and locations of agencies. We ended up consolidating into one state basketball skills tournament, and that was mainly the majority of our programs are actually in Region 4, so it kind of split the difference either way. So we had conversations with those in Region 4 to see if they were able to go to the southern location that would have been again April 25th, and so those are the counties that we're monitoring now. Fortunately, I think it looks like Washington County, their numbers were better than Marathon County this week, so it's kind of play the guessing game, and it worked out a little bit on that side of things, but we're still not where we need to be on that. So for those in basketball skills, we'll continue to update on those as we get closer to the event, but we're just having those conversations now to be able to see where we're going to be with that. So fortunately, not a huge update on that, other than just saying that we're monitoring the situation, and we'll be in contact with those coaches either way for that. We are coming up on the summer sports seasons, but there's a lot of programs that are starting or that are starting soon or started a little bit ago. A reminder for those, if you're starting a new sports season with your agency, you just need to notify your athletic director in your area to let us know when you started and where you're practicing, how many times a week, and then we'll use that information when you turn in your phase requests. That way we know if you've been practicing for 2 weeks. We discuss those phasing requests. We had about a handful of them this morning, where we were able to approve those doing outdoor practices, and then the ones for indoor practices, we were monitoring what that COVID burden number was. So we do discuss those Thursday mornings as a sports staff. So if you turn one in after 10 a.m. on a Thursday morning, it's probably going to be discussed the following Thursday. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're putting those petitions in. And like I said, it would be 2 weeks after that start date that you need to be in your phase 1 protocols at this point before we can advance into phase 2. So right now, for those agencies participating outdoors, there hasn't been a whole lot of issues with getting agencies to phase 2, just with the way the numbers are working. And then we will let you know if you get approved for phase 2. If the numbers get to a point where we have to go back to phase 1, we would notify you in those situations. So while we share the location of that map and we share it during these coaches meetings, we'll also specifically tell your agency if it affects you one way or another when it comes to what phases you want to be in. So track registrations are coming up here next week for a couple of our track meets. I believe that was, I'm trying to remember which one's the earlier weekend. Region 6 is, and 3. Okay, and 2? No, just 3. Okay, Amber, you're throwing me off. So Amber runs the Region 2 one and was holding 3. So Region 3 and Region 6 qualifying scores will be coming in for next Wednesday. And then all the other meets would follow up on the 28th would be the registration deadline. Reminder for those qualifying scores, we're looking for the best score you've recorded at practice for those individuals. I know there's going to be a lot of athletes in events that they hadn't typically been in, with the way that the way the track meets are set up this year, limiting some of those events. So it's going to be important for us to get information on the athletes who are doing new events. So specifically in a running race that maybe would do, those athletes who would do a 200 and a 400, they might be doing a 100 and 200 this time, and they might be doing the 4 and the 8. So that odd race out that they normally hadn't participated in, those qualifying times are important for us. And then also I know that there's some shot put athletes that may be doing the mini jab this time around based on what we're offering. So it's just going to be important for us to grab some of those. And then just a reminder for softball throw, if your athletes can throw over 15 meters, we would like them to look into doing the mini jab. If they've thrown over 20 meters at a competition, then they would not be allowed to do softball throw at competition. So the meaning behind that is softball throw is intended to be a developmental event. And so we want to keep that competition level in a developmental realm, and then encourage them to move on to a more challenging throw with it. In a normal year, they would have the option to do both the mini jab or the shot put, but this year we would encourage them to do the mini jab. So that's kind of the big parts with track coming up. Again, we're monitoring those numbers for our events, but right now, hopefully, if things remain the same as far as the COVID numbers go, we shouldn't have any issues with offering the station approach for track and field this year. With those doing track, is there any questions specific to track since we're on that topic from anybody? So
our volunteers, like I signed up to volunteer for the Region 3 district meet, are we still allowed to do that, or what's your protocols for that?
So we will have a smaller amount of day of volunteers at these events just because of what we need for those. Obviously, those are being accounted in for our numbers. So our volunteers, similar to what we'll send out for coaches and athletes, will have to go through the screening protocol, as well as masks will be worn, and as well as additional training on site. So it'd be the same return to play protocols that we're currently going to, and obviously there might be a little bit of different as far as having to sanitize for if you're helping with a throwing event or something like that. But all that information would get sent to you from the tournament director. So in your case, Mike, Michaela would send that to you ahead of time.
Jason, do you see some questions in the chat?
I forgot to open my chat, so no. For in practice, I got one that was separate. For in practice, the registration for in practice events is your region's registration deadline. So for 6 and 3, your registration for in practice would be next Wednesday. For everybody else, it would be April 28th. The final score deadline's the same for everybody, since we're divisioning everybody across the state, and then some award ceremonies will be earlier. So the deadline for submitting final scores for in-practice events is Sunday, May 9th. So, and Brittany posted the athletic dates for that. So your registration deadline for your in-person event is the same for in-practice, but the final score deadline is the 9th of May. If you normally do shot put, do they have to do Jeff? No. If they throw over 15-minute practice, do we have to have them switch to Jav? So the way the rules, so I guess I'll answer both those questions separately. So if you normally do shot put, they do not have to do a mini Jav. They actually do not have to do a throw. Athletes do not need to do one event per station. They have the ability to do so. But what we would ask is that the athletes would rotate in the stations together. So if they're not doing a throw in that, they would still be with their group for that time period. They just wouldn't participate in that specific station. So that's the same for throws. That'd be the same if they just want to do one of the track events, and that'd be the same if they don't want to do in the long jumps. They don't have to, but they would still be with the group while the rest of the group is doing those events for that half-hour time period that they would be over there. So the way the rules are written, and this is where it's always hard to answer this question. So the question is, if they throw over 15 meters in practice, do we have to have them switch over to mini Jav? The intent of the rule is that we keep people who throw 15 meters or less into the softball throw, and we would want them to challenge themselves. The way the rule is written is if they throw over 15 meters, we recommend that they move to mini Jav. If they have thrown 20 meters in competition, they cannot. So the only time we can tell you that they cannot throw the softball in softball throw is if they've thrown 20 meters or more at competition. But again, the idea is to keep the softball throw a developmental event. So it's we trust that coaches are not putting people who they would be inappropriate for the event because they're throwing further into that event. So there's a little bit of self-regulation on that as far as that goes. Clarification for standing long jump, 1 meter qualifying score is not required. Yep. So we got that question before, because in the rules for long jump, it says that the minimum distance that you need for long jump is 1 meter, and that's because the fault line and the beginning of the pit, there's a distance of 1 meter. A lot of tracks that you would have to clear in order to make it a successful jump and for it to be safe. For standing long jump, 1 meter is not required because they are standing with their toes basically on the line to go into the pit. So as long as they can make the jump, if they can jump a distance far enough to get their feet in the pit from the starting point there, that would make them appropriate for that event. So they do not need to have 1 meter or higher qualifying score for standing long jump. For running long jump, they would. So that would answer that question from Brenda. There's a couple more coming up here. I will double check. I don't believe, all right, and Brittany already answered that question. The link for Basketball Skills virtual award ceremony has not been released yet. We will share that for you. And then Mike will have somebody look into for the waivers. We'll let you know. So any other questions for track? Again, regional dates will have, I believe they're all Saturdays this year. So it would be the 9th for regions 3 and 6, and then the 15th for the other regional meets. We will also be sharing quota based on your participation numbers for advancing to the state track meet. The state track meet at Lawrence University on Saturday, June 26th. So we will have an opportunity to advance. If your agency is not comfortable with going to state or not planning on going to state, when we release quota, just let your athletic director or the tournament director know that you're not planning on using your state quota, so we can distribute that to somebody else who would be wanting to go. So, and that's gonna be the same thing with swim. For swimming, we have a couple meets, and that's gonna be a little bit later. That's the first couple weekends of June. We will have regions 2, 3, 4, 5 at UW Stevens Point on Saturday, June 5th. I know some people have been asking for clarification on that. We have that confirmed. I thought we had sent that out, but if we haven't, I apologize. It is Saturday, June 5th for regions 2, 3, 4, and 5 at UW Stevens Point. And then remind me, Nicole, the region 6 one is, remind me the date on that one.
Sunday, June 6th.
Sunday, June 6th. And that's in the Dells. And then Amber is it Sunday or Saturday?
Saturday, June 12th.
The 12th. At YMCA in Oconomowoc. We are still confirming. I'll get to spectators here in a second. We are still confirming the date location for state swim, but it's looking like Sunday, June 27th. We're just waiting for the approval from the COVID protocol board at the location we'd like to go to, which is pretty standard nowadays. But I would anticipate it's going to be that same weekend, if not specifically on the 27th for state swim as we go forward. And like I said, I will send out we'll send out that information as soon as it's confirmed, probably pretty quickly. So, and Brittany also did share the swim dates for that. Jennifer, you're talking about for swim, what the date for that was, or for track? For track, that one. It sounds like we're confirmed on May 15th for region 4 and 5, and it looks like we're May 15th, and I believe it's Brillion High School is the location for region 4 and 5. So, yeah, and so that would be for swim and track. That's what those dates. Again, for state soccer, we're doing one state tournament this year. That's at Mukwonago on May 15th. Every team in the state will come to that tournament. This year, we've not requiring scrimmage scores, but we're asking teams to fill out the score assessment that was included on the rules. We will use last year's data for where previous year where the teams were division previously, and then also those the score assessments will be helpful for new athletes or teams that may have been combined because you don't have enough to do. If you normally have 3 teams, you're doing 1 team. It'll just be helpful for us to know what the level of that team will be. Again, that's Saturday, May 15th at Mukwonago. And then the big thing with outside, again, reminding people that with the COVID protocols, we have required that during soccer, masks will be worn because we cannot facilitate social distancing during play. And that's consistent with what the CDC recommends, as well as other leagues in the area requiring of players is to wear masks during play. So that is just a little bit of a difference than from our traditional COVID protocols. The question got brought up. We'll be sending out a memo here shortly about spectators. What for the for basketball skills and the summer games season, what we are having is for indoor events, we have no spectators. A lot of that has to do with facilities and their protocols. Keeping it consistent, there would be no spectators. You would be allowed to bring the appropriate number of coaches to these events. So that doesn't mean that you're just everybody's just dropping athletes off and then the competition's happening, but it would mean that there's no parents. There would be no parents at the event if they're not in a coaching or chaperone role. We're looking into, I know some of the YMCA areas do have some sort of streaming options. Obviously, it's not something we can do everywhere for indoor events, but if it is available, we will share that when we can. And then for outdoor events, this is also coming from a lot of our venues. We're limiting it to a maximum of 2 spectators per participant. So more information will come out to agencies about how we're monitoring that. But it will also be up to agencies to also relay that information. Again, these are based on keeping our numbers at our events to where we need them to be, as well as the facilities requirements. The other portion of that is there probably will be a designated spectator areas that for these spectators to be in, and we will do our best to make sure that you can see the majority of action. I know track's a little bit spread out, so each venue will kind of be able to share what their plan is for those type of things. But just know that, again, we have these protocols because of the facilities and because of our guidelines, and that if we find that we go to these events and it's widely not being followed, then that's where we may have to look at what we do for future events, whether not allowing spectators or not knowing if we can't manage it, being able to offer some of this stuff. So it really does take a team effort from everybody to be following through on protocols with your families and with your athletes in order for us to be able to do this safely, and we'll do our best on our end too as well. So I know Brittany answered this one, but I'll answer it. Can masks be removed to athletes' chin during track races? So again, for in the protocol for individual events, during cardiovascular activities, they can remove their mask to their chin or down, and then they would just replace it at the end of a race or at the end of a cardiovascular activity. There's also a plan in place. Obviously, for swim, we would not have them swim with masks, but there's a way of monitoring or being able to do that where they can maximize when they're wearing masks at the events. So for individual ones, during the participation in a cardiovascular activity, they can pull it down and then put it back up at the end of the race or whatever it is. What about softball games and flag football this year? So at this point, and again, we're going to keep monitoring things and reevaluating as we go, but at this point, the second half of the year is going to be try to be run as normal as possible from our schedule standpoint. So invitational tournaments are still being planned for softball in those areas. So right now we're still having the game requirement for softball, and then doing district and then state OST is still planned for August 7th at Carroll University this year. And we'll keep going from that. Our sports resource teams will be updating those rules for that outdoor sports season, getting those out sooner than later. So we have an idea for what protocols, additional protocols might be in place specifically for those events. But as I mentioned to people, if an invitational tournament does not happen and there's issues getting games, just please contact your athletic director. It's a year where we can be flexible, but we also want to, if you can get games in, trying to figure out a way to make that happen. So softball and flag football, at this point, we're still running like it's a normal season for that, but I just want to make sure that we have that. And then Hannah, I think Nicole can touch base with you about who the coach for West Madison would be. Thanks, Mike. The leadership conference is May 22nd. We haven't registered for that. The registration link is on the website. Brittany, if you can add the notes to send with the follow-up email. But yes, the leadership conference is May 22nd from 8 to 1:30, and Brittany just posted it in the chat there for those who would be interested in it for that. So again, just recap from the sports side of things, we are again full force of planning these events within our protocols. If you're starting your practices, make sure you contact your athletic director so we know when you've started, and then those phasing requests, send those to your athletic director and we'll discuss those Thursday morning and let you know an answer after that meeting Thursday morning. So does anybody have any question about summer sports season that we went over? I know that's a lot of information. Some that a lot of it that you may have heard, some that might be new. Sharon Seeger's Region 8 track is May 15th, correct, at Mukwonago. And again, for Region 8, it's Mukwonago High School. That's not a typo. We had to move from Muskego because of their restrictions for outside groups. So it is at Mukwonago High School. So that's those two get confused a little bit sometimes. So if we don't have any additional sports questions, then I'll hand it over to Brittany.
I just have a couple save the dates, one of which was the leadership conference. Thanks, Mike. I'll send out that link again in the follow-up email, so you'll have that. Another one is, it's intended for athletes, but I guess it's open to anybody. We are doing a 5-week yoga series starting at the end of the month on April, let me get my dates, make sure I know my dates, April 25th, which is a Sunday at 7. And running for 5 weeks after that. So if anyone's interested, you can sign up on our events calendar. Just posted it in the chat. The only other thing I'll mention is we are also doing a summer fitness competition. If you were involved in the spring fitness competition, it'll look very similar, a few different differences, different exercises and whatnot. I will send out more information probably by the next coaches meeting. I'll have things finalized to send out, but just keep an eye out for that. That'll run June through August. The specific dates are still being nailed down, but it'll hopefully coincide that you could run it right alongside your sport practices if you choose to, or you could do it as a separate thing too. So either way, just something to keep an eye out for, but that's all I have.
Hey, Brittany, can I ask you something?
Go
To
ahead.
be one of the fitness practices, can you add mountain climbers? I talked to you about that before.
I'll work on it.
How often do you get requested for mountain climbers? Ladina did have one other question about starting softball practices. I know we get this question a lot for softball. Typically, teams are larger than the 8. You have to be larger than the 8 when you start in phase 1. What the recommendations I have, again, it's just for your first 2 weeks, and you can phase up to phase 2. For the first 2 weeks, either having the practice, but then separating the team in half with a distance of 50 meters or more between them. So if you have multiple softball fields available, maybe split them off that way, or if you have a large fielded area. Otherwise, we would recommend maybe having half the team come to week 1, the other half come to week 2, and then the full team come to week 3. We did find that the old softball skill assessments, the 3 out of the 4 drills have non-direct contact. So they would be maybe some options that you would like to look into for softball for those phase 1, when indirect contact is you're not supposed to have direct contact during phase 1, which would be like, athletes throwing the ball from one to another. But the old skill assessments have a base running drill, a throwing drill, and a fielding drill that would not have direct contact on those. If you're looking for softball specific drills to do without direct contact, that's a good place to start. And we can send that over to you if you're interested in knowing what those drills are and what they look like. And then Brittany would also recommend, if you are looking for other things to do with that practice with indirect contact, softball specific or just general fitness drills to do. Obviously, cardio, get some cardio going or some of the strength going for softball. And if you want any, I'll put Brittany on the spot. If you have any questions about what fitness might be beneficial for softball, she can also share that with you. But she has some ideas for that. Don says to do some mountain climbers. So Mike, you can get prepped for softball by doing mountain climbers. Do I need to update my coach as athlete this year for coaching basketball? I don't know. I should look whose name is admin.
No, I
Why
think
don't you
that's Peter. I think that they've gone through the class once, then you don't need to go through it again.
But you do need to update your Class A and coaches
Right.
certification, just like any other coach. So if you want to, I'll put my email in the chat. If you want to send me an email tomorrow, I can look that up for you to see when you expire.
And I guess I should also just mention again, what came out a couple of weeks ago of making sure that everybody participating has the new COVID. Don, what's the exact phrase? What's the exact title of it? Since there's it's the
Communicable diseases waiver.
communicable diseases
Say that
waiver.
3 times in a row.
There is a link
to CD waiver.
There's a link to fill it out online. We can also there's also if you need printed copies, let us know too. But preferably we can do it online. That'd be great. We'll be tracking that, and then when we check for athletes, when we register athletes for track, which would be the next one coming up, we are double checking that their medical is up to date and that waiver is in. So making sure that your athletes who are participating has those waivers when we were going through that. And Brittany just put the waiver in the chat, and we'll include it in the follow-up email.
I sent my waiver into the state office like 2 weeks ago. I just wondered if you guys have it.
Mike, send Sam an email tomorrow and she'll look it up for you, okay?
Okay.
We have a bunch of them coming in, so we don't have them memorized quite yet. So, any other questions? Otherwise, we got through this in 35 minutes tonight. I don't see anything else popping up. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to your athletic director, or you can also email the covid@specialolympicswisconsin.org. And like I said, you'll be getting it. The spectator memo should be coming out here. I think we'll end up sending it tomorrow. And then any other updates as far as when we get things finalized, we will send out as soon as we know. So, all right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Jason.